Wow, what a year. Protests, police violence, pandemics, right-wing terrorism, recession, invasive species, wildfires, and a record-setting Atlantic hurricane season. We got deep into the Greek alphabet. Oh, and World War III. Remember how the US assassinated that Iranian general in violation of international law, and we all just started making memes about the draft? Good times. So that's why I'm glad to say so long, 2020 disasters. Yep, now all that will be a thing of the past, because we have a vaccine and we have a Joe Biden. The future is looking bright. Except, given how we exploit animals, there will inevitably be another zoonotic event, and Biden's not going to take any real action on economic inequality or police brutality, and he is absolutely going to keep increasing funding for US imperialism and our forever wars. But at least he doesn't tweet goofy stuff, am I right? And he's agreed to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, which is non-binding, and even if the US and the world were to follow it to the letter, it still wouldn't be enough for us to reverse global warming and avoid many of the worst long-term consequences. So buckle up for the eventual Hurricane Kappa. Let's check in on Australia, where it's already 2021. Yep, it's on fire again. So if 2021 isn't the automatic solution to all of our problems, what can we do? Well, have you tried a little praxis? In this context, praxis is putting political theory into action. I've put together a list of 21 praxis ideas for 2021. A couple of disclaimers first, though. I know not everyone can do all of these. I can't do all of these. But I can probably do some that you can't do, and you can probably do some that I can't do, and if a whole bunch of people all try doing what they can do, we'd be able to aid each other mutually. Secondly, this is not a complete list. I have to save something for my list of 22 ideas for 2022. Lastly, this is just a count, not a countdown. This list is in no particular order. It's not ranked because hierarchies are for chumps, and also because there isn't any one of these that is the best or the worst praxis. That's going to depend on your capabilities and your situation. So ignore the numbers and just listen for which idea or ideas you think are best for you. And without any further delay, here are 21 praxis ideas for 2021. First on the list is something that I dedicate a lot of time to, and that I really enjoy. That is really free markets. If you've never heard of a really free market before, it's like a big community garage sale, but without any of the selling. People bring all sorts of things that they don't want or are willing to give away for free. This can include clothes, food, toys, books, home goods, furniture, or really anything. Anyone visiting the market can take things for free. They don't need to trade or barter or donate or pay for anything, hence the name. Sometimes they include skill-sharing lessons, sometimes they include live music, and sometimes they include potluck-style picnics. I first saw a really free market in Winona, Minnesota, and I thought it was great. So I looked it up online and saw that many cities have their own. So that's a great place to start. See if your city has one, and if it does, get involved. Some are annual, some are monthly, and a few lucky cities have free stores that are open every day. However, when I researched really free markets, I found out that my city didn't have one. I found a blog from one that kind of petered out in 2011, but that was all. So in 2017, I started my own. It doesn't take too much, but if you want to start your own, you'll need transportation and storage space. Luckily, I had a small car and plenty of basement space, and that was all that I needed to get started. I started with just a Craigslist post and a single tub of my own unwanted items. The first month I only had maybe 5 people come by, but it has steadily grown, and now we have 20 to 30 visitors each month, sometimes 50 or 60 when the weather is good, and it's not a pandemic. I could go on and on about how much I enjoyed the market, but I have 20 more items to get to. Next up is a very well-known organization, Food Not Bombs. Food Not Bombs has branches in almost every city, and some cities have multiple groups. Most branches have a weekly event where they share a meal and groceries in public spaces, like parks or bus stops. Meals are usually vegetarian or vegan. Food is usually donated from grocery stores, bakeries, and restaurants, or sometimes grown in local gardens or scavenged from dumpsters. Food is a human right, and globally enough food is produced to feed over 10 billion people. But even in the US, about 10% of the population faces food insecurity, and that rate has gone way up during the pandemic. But it's not because of a lack of food. Every step of the food supply chain, from production to transportation to retail, wastes huge volumes of food. By getting involved with Food Not Bombs, you can help close that gap by removing perfectly good food from the waste stream and getting it to people that need it. But it's not just about giving, it's also about sharing. By volunteering with Food Not Bombs, you can meet cool people, eat great food, learn new skills, and get free groceries. If somehow hunger in my city were eliminated tomorrow, I think I would keep doing Food Not Bombs, because it's just that much fun. Before it was a subscription-based video platform and sponsor of seemingly every YouTube channel and podcast, a Skillshare was an event, large or small, where people would gather to teach each other practical skills. No, really, you can do that without the support of a subscription-based website. These can be hosted at home, in libraries, in parks. I even went to one that was after hours in a record store. I've seen lessons on knitting, self-defense, gardening, LED, light glove, hand shows, and bike maintenance. You might not think that you have a skill to teach, but I bet that everyone listening has some skill or talent that they could share with other people, even if you take it for granted. So, attend or host a skill sharing party. Alright, next idea. Use and, if possible, support free open source software. There are open source equivalents for most design and media software. There are even some open source games. I made this entire video using open source software like OBS Studio and OpenShot Video Editor. That's why it looks so adequate. Okay, I admit, with rare exception like Blender and Inkscape, open source software is usually not as capable or user-friendly as proprietary options. So why bother? Well, free is nice, we would all like to save money, but there's a saying in the open source software community that it's about free as in freedom, not free as in free beer. Open source software is the only software that you can actually own. This becomes more obvious as companies like Adobe switch to cloud-based subscription services. With open source software, you own it and you control it. You are free to use it how you want, modify it, and make copies. If you have the skills, you can get involved in an open source software project to help make it even better. If you have the money, you can donate to a project to help keep it going. And even if you can't do either of those, you can just use open source software and enjoy the freedom that it offers. Speaking of digital freedom, sharing files is Praxis. Now, I want to clarify that I would never advocate for anything illegal. I have a deep and abiding respect for the importance of intellectual property, not just as a right for individual creators, but as a long-lasting commodity to be bought and sold by multinational media corporations. However, you should share public domain works and works to which you own the intellectual property rights. For example, an editing mistake resulted in Night of the Living Dead being released without a copyright notice, and it became public domain. As a result, I am legally allowed to download Night of the Living Dead from a torrenting site, or by using a YouTube downloading website to save a copy off of YouTube. That's public domain, but I also have this DVD of a terrible college film project. Because it is my intellectual property, I can rip a copy off of this DVD using software like 10Coder Video Converter. Guess what? It's even open source. And it's very capable. In fact, it's capable of ripping copies off of any CD or DVD. But we don't want to do that. Now that I've gathered all these files that I'm legally allowed to copy, I can distribute them online, burn them to CDs and DVDs, spread them through a sneaker net, a data distribution network based on physically carrying digital storage devices from sender to receivers, or I could even broadcast them a short distance using a device called a pirate box. Huh. I wonder why they call it that. It must be because pirates love treasure, and public domain works are something that we should all treasure. Remember, this advice is only applicable to digital files that you have permission to copy, because according to Disney, a good pirate never takes another person's property. But seriously, public domain works are great, and if you'd like to get some free entertainment, Look into supporting projects that distribute public domain and open culture works. You don't need $11 movie tickets, 3 streaming services, and brand new AAA games to find entertainment. There are many great open culture projects out there, such as LibriVox, for example. LibriVox creates free audiobooks of public domain works. They're great for listening to in the evening or during a commute. Oh look, a book about baking! I'll have to give this one a listen. If you'd like, you can even contribute your own vocal talents to add to this wonderful free library from which we can all benefit. If you're looking to read public domain works instead of listening, Project Gutenberg has an enormous collection of public domain books that can be downloaded for free, as PDFs, HTML, plain text, or even Kindle. PeerTube is a free and decentralized video platform. There are no ads, it doesn't track you or sell your data, and hey, it's open source again. They are currently working on a version 3, which will include peer-to-peer streaming, and with your help, they can get there. Lastly, the Internet Archive is a library of websites, books, software, music, TV, and movies. I don't know all the legal details, but my understanding is that they are allowed to distribute this material for free because either it's public domain or it is ephemeral, meaning that unless they archived it, it would likely be lost, and with it, any of its potential historical value would be lost as well. I'm not a lawyer, I just know that it's an amazing service that everyone should support and make use of. Open culture isn't a new thing, or even a digital thing. You can make and enjoy open culture content with the next item on our list, zines. Making and sharing zines is an old practice. Arguably it goes back as far as the printing press, but literacy rates were low and printing presses were expensive, rare, and generally only controlled by financial, religious, and royal elites. However, I will grant you that Martin Luther was at least a little bit punk. Zines really began to take off with science fiction fanzines in the 1930s and 1940s. The word zine was coined in 1940, and it was added to the dictionary in 1949. In the late 60s and early 70s, when business and home printing technology became cheaper and more commonplace, zine culture exploded. Now many of the functions of zines have been absorbed by the internet, but you can still print, copy, make, and share zines about all sorts of topics. I've seen political zines, DIY zines, news zines, music zines, biographical zines, and so much more. Some people hate to hear this, but the next item on my list is going vegan. Conscious consumption will never be enough to reverse our climate catastrophe, or undo the harm of capitalism. But there's no reason why any of us need to pay for the rampant slaughter and exploitation of animals. There are affordable ways to eat vegan, and in fact, eating vegan is generally the more frugal option. In addition to not slaughtering and exploiting animals, eating vegan is generally healthier, and it's one of the most significant things that you or I can do to reduce our contribution to industries that are destroying the climate. Did you know grass is the #1 irrigated crop in the US? We spend huge amounts of time and effort and money fertilizing it, mowing it, watering it, and weeding it. And for all that work, it looks boring and tastes awful. That's why some radicals advocate for growing food, not lawns. You can use what you grow without needing your produce shipped halfway around the world, or you can give it away, or contribute to food net bombs. But what if you don't have any land to grow on? Well, if you have a balcony or a large windowsill, you could experiment with container gardening, or you could just go use someone else's land. The Walnut People's Garden has been squatting an empty lot for nearly a year. They're providing food to the community, creating a beautiful public space, and blocking the landowners from building a block of cookie-cutter luxury condos. This is just one example. I know that there are many more like it. You can find a community garden and get involved, or start your own. Gardening for food is great, of course, but you can also garden to support your local ecosystem. Climate change and habitat destruction are causing a terrifying global mass extinction. It can reasonably feel hopeless, and I know that nothing on my list will be enough to reverse this catastrophe. However, you can do small things to support wildlife in your area. You can research and plant native plants. Here on the prairie, That means grasses with deep roots that are good for the soil. You can build feeders and habitats for native birds and insects. Depending on where you live, you may be able to support bats and other mammals. Remember, you don't need to actually own land to do this. Most cities have derelict spaces that can be revitalized with plants and animal habitats. The channel Crime Pays But Botany Doesn't has some great videos about this sort of guerrilla conservation. This year, the death of George Floyd sparked the largest protests by the Black Lives Matter movement that we've seen so far. We're a long way from achieving meaningful change, defunding or abolishing police, getting justice for the victims of police violence. But imagine where we'd be if George Floyd had been killed with no witnesses, just another little-known name on a long list of victims of police brutality. Darnella Frazier is a hero for documenting George Floyd's final moments, and she was only 17 at the time. Without her courage, the world would have never known about Derek Chauvin's cruelty. That is why my next suggestion is filming cops. Until we can defund the police or abolish the police, we need to be watching the police. Especially if you have privileges that decrease the risks you face around police, film every police interaction that you can. Don't wait for things to go sideways before you pull out your phone. If you see cops outside a house in your neighborhood, if you witness an arrest in progress, film it. Cops need to know that we are watching and we will report on their misconduct. Do your research, know your rights, don't escalate. But do let them know that you're watching. Now, I do want to be clear. This isn't adventurism. This isn't ambulance chasing. Your goal is not to witness another murder by police. You should want to have hours and hours of videos of boring, peaceful police interactions. Hopefully, with civilians watching over them, police will show some restraint. But we already know all too well that this isn't always enough. At least if the worst does happen, we can ensure that because we are watching and recording, their victims will not be forgotten. I don't know how to segue away from that one. So, how's work? Sucks, right? That's because there will always be an inherent power imbalance between you and your employer, and they like it that way. Employers want to keep as much information as possible secret, and they want to keep you and your coworkers isolated as a means of control. All bosses, yes, your boss too. The way to correct this power imbalance is to join a union, because apes together strong. Yes, unions require union dues, but unionized workers consistently have much higher incomes than their non-unionized counterparts. Higher enough to easily offset the cost of dues. Now, you do have to be careful about how you do this. Do not stroll into work tomorrow and start chatting up all your coworkers about unionizing. Do not let your boss know that you're interested in joining a union. That is a quick way to get you and anyone you've talked to fired really fast. Start by reaching out to an existing union in your area, and their organizers will guide you through how to discreetly organize your coworkers until it's too late for your boss to fire all of you. But Leftic, I hear you say, I'm a part-time light bulb taste tester, and my job doesn't fit with the SEIU, the Teamsters, the AFT, or any other existing union. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you'll just have to struggle under the boot of your boss forever. I mean, it'd be great if there was like one big union that you could join, a union for all the industrial workers of the world. But alas, no such union exists. Don't Google it. Sorry. Moving on. Wow, I really liked that union idea. Using collective negotiating to correct a capitalist power imbalance sure is nice to democratize hierarchical systems. If only we could apply that to other power dynamics in the world, like with my jerk landlord. Oh wait, you can. In the same way that employees will always have a number advantage over employers, tenants will always have a number advantage over landlords. When they harness that power, by joining or forming a tenant union, they can be a landlord's worst nightmare. Tenant unions in many places are passing tenant bills of rights, exposing terrible housing conditions, and preventing evictions. Sometimes, You even get to do really badass stuff, like blocking landlords from getting into courthouses to file evictions. Wouldn't that just feel so great? So unless you love black mold, landlords, and homeless people freezing outside of empty apartment buildings, join a tenant union. If your city doesn't have one, reach out to a tenant union in another city to learn how to organize your own. Let's just unionize everything. Who's going to stop us? Capitalists? Unlikely. Word on the street is, we are unstoppable and another world is possible. So the next item is yet another type of union, a transit riders union. These are not as common, but in the cities that have transit riders unions, they are very powerful. Transit riders unions work to preserve, expand, and improve public transportation and make it more equitable. They can also advocate for safe working conditions and fair pay for public transit employees. In Seattle, the Transit Riders Union pressured King County Metro to stop transporting police into protests. That's amazing! So, same as other unions, if your city has one, you can join. If your city doesn't have one, but you really want one, you can reach out to organizers from another city to learn how to organize a transit riders union where you live. I mentioned tenant unions earlier, and they're great. But do you know what's even better than overpowering landlords through collective negotiation? Eliminating landlords. By joining a housing co-op. In a housing co-op, all residents are also part owners. Last year, I started a housing co-op with 3 friends. We now collectively own a beautiful 4-bedroom house with a tool shed and a big yard, which we are converting to gardens. Our combined mortgage, property tax, insurance, utilities, and maintenance costs are all far less expensive than anywhere that I have rented in this city. But it's not just cheap. This house is also a much nicer place to live than anywhere I've ever rented in this city. But most importantly, we are in control of this property. There isn't a landlord that can evict us. We aren't subject to any searches. I can have a pet with no pet deposit. We manage our own repairs and improvements. I can just paint my walls however I want. And I chose bold avocado, so I probably shouldn't be trusted with this power. Housing co-ops can also combine into large networks called community land trusts. In this way, the community can reduce the cost of living while preserving and revitalizing unused spaces to meet the needs of the neighborhood. This isn't the easiest type of praxis to get involved in, but I would highly recommend that you try it, because the benefits are enormous. You may get lucky and find a housing co-op in your area with space available. To start your own, you and your group would need enough money for a down payment and good enough credit to get a mortgage. It isn't easy, but it's much easier together instead of on your own. On my own, I would have never been able to own a house, much less one as nice as this. Sharing is cool. Let's do some more sharing. Little Free Libraries are a wonderful program for sharing books freely with your community. You can also stock them with zines and digital media on discs or through a pirate box. The same model can also be used for projects like Soul Pantry KC for distributing food, hygiene products, blankets, and clothes, or plant libraries used for distributing seeds and sprouts. Now, one issue that I've seen with these programs is that in many cities, the Little Free Libraries are popping up in more affluent and, frankly, whiter areas. They're providing free books to communities where kids never had a problem accessing books in the first place, whether it was from public libraries, bookstores, or at school. As a result, these projects end up being more about virtue signaling than actually helping anyone. If this applies to you in your neighborhood, then I'd like to point out that you can build or stock any of these stands, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in your yard. You can reach out to people and businesses in other areas who might like to host one of these stands if you would build and maintain it. Another great way to share is by hosting film screenings. Depending on your living situation, these could be hosted at a school or at your home, but I think the most accessible approach is to host them at public libraries. These films can be documentaries like Black Snake Killers or Dominion, or narratives with leftist themes like La Commune, Parasite, or the classic revolutionary work Space Jam. The film screenings that I've been to have also included group discussions afterwards and a meal provided by Food Not Bombs. The offer of a free film screening and meal is sure to bring people in. So these events can be a great opportunity to meet new people, learn from their perspectives, and discuss issues that affect all of us. You may meet new people that could help with a project, or vice versa. They may introduce you to a project that you can support. Where it's possible, making things yourself or with the help of your comrades is a great way to reduce your impact and take power away from corporations. Getting means of production is difficult and expensive unless you were to, I don't know, seize them or something. But depending on your budget, there's a sliding scale of manufacturing tools and skills that you can use to make things for yourself and other people. From sewing, knitting, and crocheting, to woodworking, welding, cooking, and canning, there are many DIY skills that you can learn to help make yourself and your community more independent from capitalist modes of production. If you have more space and money to use, digital manufacturing tools like CNC routers, laser cutters, and 3D printers make it easier than ever before to make your ideas a reality. The Precious Plastic team has created an incredible set of tools that you can use to recycle waste plastic and turn it into something beautiful or useful. Now, of course, those tools are a very big investment, but you might look into if there are maker spaces in your community where you can use those tools for a monthly or annual membership. In my city, there's a community college makerspace where anyone can join to use all sorts of digital manufacturing tools. There is also a recycling center that offers classes in how to use their set of precious plastic tools. Many items on this list are big actions that require groups of people, resources, and time. So I want to talk about something small you can do. Fix things. In an economy reliant on endless consumption of low-quality products designed to have short, useful lives, mending is Praxis. Now, this kind of work can go big, like bicycle collectives that maintain public shops where people can learn to maintain their bikes. This kind of work can also be small. Learning how to replace a button or fix a seam. Refurbishing old computers with free open source operating systems. Fixing and restoring old furniture, the kind you can usually get for free off of Craigslist. All of these can extend the useful lifespan of a product, saving you money and reducing waste. Visible mending is a trend that I've become very interested in lately. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, visible mending repairs damage to clothes in a way that acknowledges the process of damage and repair while making the item even more beautiful. I don't mean to praise capitalism, but you know the saying that capitalists will sell us the rope to hang them with? Well, I'm not advocating for that, but it is true that people will gladly sell you the tools for your own liberation. What do I mean? All sorts of keys are available for anyone to buy. You can buy standard keys for turning on water mains, handcuff keys. You can buy the keys to access control panels on pay laundry machines. You can even buy wrenches that fit those special pentagon bolts on fire hydrants. Many types of construction equipment do not have customized ignition keys. Instead, they have 2 or 3 standard ignition keys that work for every machine that brand produces. And those keys can also be found online. For this video, I'm just letting you know that you can buy those keys legally. They might make a great collection. I don't know. And what you do with them is up to you. Have you ever seen spikes under an overpass or benches with awkward armrests bolted on? This is called hostile architecture, and it's awful. Structures like this are put in place because cities and businesses think that it's cheaper and better to force homeless people to find somewhere less noticeable to lie down than to actually solve homelessness. Governments and billionaires could easily solve homelessness anytime they choose by just providing housing. It's literally that easy, and the cost is tiny compared to the wealth of the 1% or a city's police budget or the US military budget. Now, of course, you don't have the wealth of someone like Jeff Bezos, who could house people, literally thousands of people, on a whim, without even impacting his quality of life. But you can fight back against hostile architecture. Many times, the central armrests of benches that are meant to prevent people from lying down are attached with standard bolts. and could be removed quickly with an adjustable wrench. Sometimes more drastic measures are necessary. Some activists have placed cement, foam, and wood over the spikes meant to keep people out of certain areas. By doing this, they make those refuges accessible and comfortable again. Wow, congratulations, you made it to the end of my first terrible political video. But maybe you actually liked it, and if you did, you could let me know by clicking that thumbs up. I think I might actually make another video. Eventually. Was there one of these ideas that you liked and you want to know more about? Well, YouTube comes with this nifty little feature where you can comment, and I'll make a video focusing on whichever idea most people wanted to learn about. Of course, it'll be a while until I actually get around to making that video, so you might want to subscribe and hit that little bell so that you would get a notification when I make a second video. That'd be awesome! Alright, good luck with the Praxis. I love you. Bye-bye.